My husband told his whole family to dump all the kids on me and made me the family daycare. He never expected what I did after. I found out about the arrangement at my sister-in-law's birthday party. Derek was in the backyard with his brothers and their wives, and I was inside doing dishes, when Linda pulled me aside with her toddler on her hip. She said, "So Derek mentioned you're fine watching Lucas next weekend while we go to that conference." I had no idea what she was talking about. I told her Derek had never mentioned anything to me about watching her son. Linda looked confused and then called Derek inside. He came in, wiping his hands on a towel, and smiled like this was no big deal. "Yeah, I told everyone at the family gathering last month that since you're home anyway, you could help out when people need childcare. It saves everyone money and your family." I stared at him. I had never agreed to be the family daycare. I had never said I was available to watch other people's children. I'd never even been asked. Derek explained that it was just helping out, that family helps each other, and that I should be happy to be needed. Linda nodded supportively. "He said you were really good with kids and that you wouldn't mind." I asked Derek if we could talk in the other room. Once we were alone, I told him he couldn't make decisions about my time without asking me first. He said I was being selfish, that family was important, that watching a few kids for a few hours wasn't a big deal. I told him it was a very big deal to me, and he needed to call everyone back and tell them the arrangement was off. He said he'd think about it. The first drop-off was the following Saturday. Derek's brother showed up at 8 in the morning with his 2 kids, ages 3 and 5, without warning. He said Derek told him to bring them early. I hadn't even had coffee yet. When I told him I couldn't take them, Derek appeared and asked why I was making this difficult. His brother left the 2 kids in our living room and drove away. That was the beginning. Over the next 3 weeks, Derek's entire extended family seemed to believe I'd become free childcare. His cousin dropped off her infant twice without a car seat, just handing me the baby and leaving. His other sister came by with 3 kids and said she'd be back in 6 hours. One of them got sick in our bathroom. Another one broke a lamp. My own child stopped getting my attention because I was managing 5 other children on a Tuesday afternoon while Derek was at work. I finally told Derek I was done. I said he needed to tell his family immediately that this wasn't happening anymore. He said I was being dramatic. He said people depended on me now. He said real wives helped their husbands' families. He said I was selfish for not wanting to be part of the family support system. He said his mother had watched his siblings' kids all the time and nobody ever complained. His mother chose to do that, I said. "You made this choice for me without my permission. That's different." But he'd already decided my objection wasn't valid. He told his family I was just tired and would be fine once I adjusted. The next Saturday, 5 kids showed up at our door. 5. His brother, his cousin, and his sister all dropped kids off between 8 and 9 in the morning, all with vague pickup times, all expecting me to manage them while Derek went to play golf. I called him while he was on the course. I told him to come home immediately. He said it was too late to cancel, and I was a stay-at-home mom, so this was literally what I did all day. I told him I did childcare for 1 child, not 6. I told him if he didn't come home, I was leaving. He laughed and said I wouldn't actually do that. I packed a bag, loaded my own child into the car, and drove to my mother's house. I left all 5 of his relatives' children in our living room, unsupervised. His family started calling within 20 minutes. Derek called from the golf course, frantically asking where I was. I didn't answer until he got home and realized the kids were still there, waiting to be picked up by the people who'd dropped them off. I told him I was at my mother's house and I was staying until he called every single member of his family and told them the childcare arrangement was permanently finished. It took 3 days before he finally called his family back. I thought it would stop, but what they did made me lose it. I got back home on a Thursday afternoon. Derek had spent 3 days calling his family, or so he said, telling them the childcare arrangement was permanently over. He seemed relieved when I agreed to come home, like everything was fixed now. I unpacked my bag and tried to settle back into normal life. My daughter was happy to be in her own room again. Derek made dinner that night and we ate mostly in silence. He kept saying things would be different now, that his family understood. I wanted to believe him. 2 days later, on Saturday morning, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Layla. The message said, "Hey, so when are you going to be back to normal? I need to drop off the kids next Saturday for a few hours." I stared at the screen. Back to normal. Like the past month had just been me having some kind of breakdown. Like Derek had actually told her anything real. I felt my stomach drop. Another text came through while I was still processing the first one. This one was from Derek's cousin asking if I could watch her baby on Tuesday afternoon since Derek mentioned I was feeling better now. Feeling better. I opened my text history and started taking screenshots. Layla's message asking when I'd be back to normal. The cousin asking about Tuesday. Then I scrolled further and found more. Derek's other sister had texted 3 days ago asking if the situation was resolved yet, because she needed coverage for next month. His brother had sent a message yesterday saying he appreciated my flexibility, and family came first. Every single message made it clear that Derek had not told them the arrangement was over. He'd told them I was being dramatic. He'd told them I needed time to calm down. He'd told them I would come around once I stopped overreacting. I saved every screenshot to a folder. My hands were shaking. I walked into the living room where Derek was watching television. I held up my phone and showed him Layla's text. He glanced at it and shrugged. "She probably just didn't understand what I meant," he said. I showed him the next screenshot. And the next. And the next. Derek's face changed as I kept showing him message after message. He finally held up his hand and told me to stop. I asked him what exactly he told his family when he called them. Derek rubbed his face and admitted he'd told them a softer version of events. He said he didn't want them thinking badly of him. He said he explained that I was stressed and needed some space, but that things would probably work out once I had time to adjust. I felt something break inside me. I told him he lied to me. He promised he would tell them the arrangement was over, and instead he told them I was being dramatic and would get over it. Derek got defensive. He said I was making him look like a bad son and a bad brother by refusing to help family. He said his whole family thought he married someone selfish, and he was trying to manage their expectations while also keeping me happy. Keeping me happy. Like my clearly stated boundary about not being volunteered for childcare without my consent was just some mood he needed to manage. I told Derek this wasn't about childcare anymore. This was about him lying to me. This was about him prioritizing what his family thought of him over what I actually said I needed. This was about him making decisions about my life and my time without ever asking me first. Derek said I was blowing this out of proportion. He said marriage meant compromise. He said I was acting like he committed some terrible crime when all he did was try to help his family and keep the peace. I pointed out that compromise requires both people to agree. He made a unilateral decision to volunteer my time without asking me. Then when I objected, he lied about fixing it. That's not compromise. That's him doing whatever he wants and expecting me to go along with it. Derek got up from the couch. He said his family thought I was being selfish and maybe they had a point. He said real partners supported each other's families. He said I was creating drama where there didn't need to be any. I walked away and went to our bedroom. I called my mom and told her what happened. I told her about the texts and about Derek admitting he lied. My mom was quiet for a long moment. Then she said I could stay with her as long as I needed. She said I should think carefully about whether Derek actually respected me as an equal partner, or if he just expected me to go along with whatever he decided. She said the childcare thing was bad enough, but lying about it was worse. She said a husband who respected his wife wouldn't volunteer her time without asking, and definitely wouldn't lie about making it right. I was still on the phone with my mom when I heard the doorbell ring. I heard Derek answer it. I heard children's voices. I walked out to the living room and found Philip standing in our entryway with his 2 kids. Philip smiled at me and said Derek told him the misunderstanding was cleared up. He said he really appreciated me being flexible about watching the kids today while he and his wife went to a lunch event. I looked at Derek. He looked away. I told Philip I wasn't watching his children. I told him Derek lied to him. I told him there was no misunderstanding and I never agreed to provide childcare for anyone. Philip's smile disappeared. He looked at Derek. Derek started to say something, but Philip cut him off. Philip pulled out his phone and called Derek right there even though Derek was standing 5 feet away. Derek's phone rang. He answered it. Philip started asking what was going on and why I was saying I wouldn't watch the kids. Derek tried to smooth things over. He said I was still adjusting to the family dynamic and sometimes I got overwhelmed. He said give it a few more weeks and things would settle down. I walked over and took Derek's phone out of his hand. I told Philip directly that Derek volunteered my time without asking me. I told him I never agreed to watch anyone's children. I told him Derek created this entire situation by making commitments using my time without my permission, and now he was lying to everyone about what actually happened. Philip grabbed his kids' hands and left. He didn't say goodbye. He just walked out and got in his car. I handed Derek his phone back. Within an hour, my phone started ringing. First, it was Layla calling to say I embarrassed Derek in front of Philip. Then it was Derek's other sister calling to say I was making family gatherings awkward. Then it was his cousin saying I needed to think about how my actions affected everyone else. Not one person acknowledged that Derek created this situation. Not one person asked if maybe Derek was wrong for volunteering my time without asking. Not one person seemed to care that he lied to me and to them. They just cared that I wasn't going along with what Derek wanted. I told Derek I was going back to my mom's house. I told him I would stay there until he had an honest conversation with his family about what actually happened. Derek said I was running away from problems instead of working through them. He said mature adults didn't leave every time things got difficult. I packed my bag again and loaded my daughter into the car. Derek stood in the driveway watching us leave. He didn't try to stop me. At my mom's house, I sat at her kitchen table with a notebook and started writing everything down. Every single incident from the past 3 weeks. The first Saturday when Derek's brother dropped off 2 kids without warning. The Tuesday when his cousin handed me an infant without a car seat. The Wednesday when his sister left 3 kids for 6 hours. The time one child got sick in our bathroom and I cleaned it up while managing 4 others. The broken lamp nobody offered to replace. The Friday afternoon when I had 5 children under age 7 in my living room, and no idea when anyone was coming back. The Saturday morning Derek went golfing while I watched 6 kids including my own. Every dismissive comment Derek made when I objected. Every time he said I was being dramatic or selfish or not a team player. Every time he told me real wives helped their husbands' families. Every time he said his mother did this without complaining. The list filled 3 pages. I kept remembering more things. The time I had to cancel a doctor appointment because Derek's sister dropped off kids early. The afternoon I missed my own daughter's school event because I was watching someone else's children. The evening Derek came home and asked why I looked tired when I'd just been home all day. I stared at the pages and realized how much worse it was than I'd even acknowledged to myself. My mom came into the kitchen and poured herself coffee. She sat down across from me and I pushed the notebook toward her. She read through all 3 pages without saying anything. When she finished, she looked up at me with this serious expression. She asked if this was the first time Derek had made decisions about my life without asking me. I opened my mouth to say yes, but then I stopped. I thought about how Derek decided we'd spend every Christmas with his family without discussing it with me first. How he told his parents we'd host Thanksgiving before checking if I was okay with that. How he signed us up for his brother's moving help without asking if I was free that weekend. How he committed us to watching his parents' dog for 2 weeks while they vacationed without seeing if I was comfortable with that. How he bought a new truck without talking to me about the budget impact. How he was invited his friends over for poker night and told me about it the day they showed up. The pattern had been there since we got married. I just never connected it all together before. I told my mom it wasn't the first time. She nodded like she'd already known the answer. My phone rang. Derek's cousin Seth. I almost didn't answer, but my mom said I should hear what he had to say. I put it on speaker. Seth started talking immediately about how he heard I was refusing to be part of the family support system. He said family helps each other and that's how it works. He said I was being individualistic and selfish. He said Derek was trying to bring everyone closer together, and I was making it difficult. No. He said his wife watched his sister's kids all the time and never complained about it. He said that's what family does. He talked for 3 straight minutes without letting me get a word in. When he finally paused, I asked him one question. Did anyone ask me before deciding I would provide free childcare for the entire extended family? Seth said that wasn't the point. He said that's not how family works. He said you just help when help is needed. He said Derek was being thoughtful by volunteering me because he knew I was good with kids and home anyway. He said I should be grateful Derek thought of ways to include me in family life. I told Seth that volunteering someone else's time without their consent wasn't thoughtful. I said it was controlling. I said Derek made commitments using my time without my permission and that wasn't okay. Seth got quiet for a second. Then he said I had modern ideas about marriage that didn't align with family values. He said traditional families support each other without keeping score. He said I was bringing toxic independence into what should be a communal family structure. Then he hung up on me. I sat there staring at my phone. My mom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. She said Seth just told me everything I needed to know about how Derek's family viewed me. Not as a person with my own autonomy. As a resource they could use however they wanted. 2 hours later, Derek showed up at my mom's front door. I heard him talking to my mom in the entryway. She let him in, but she didn't leave us alone. He came into the kitchen looking frustrated and tired. He said we needed to talk. He sat down at the table without being invited. He said his family was mad at him now. He said his mom called him disappointed. He said his sister wasn't speaking to him. He said Seth told everyone I was being difficult about family values. He said this was getting out of hand. He said if I would just watch the kids a few times, everyone would calm down and things could go back to normal. I looked at him and said no. I said the answer was no. I said the real issue wasn't about watching kids. I said the real issue was that he didn't see anything wrong with what he did. Derek got defensive immediately. He said helping family shouldn't be this big of a deal. He said I was making our marriage problem into a family crisis. He said if I cared about our relationship, I'd help smooth things over with his family. He said I was forcing him to choose between his wife and his family. My mom spoke up from where she was standing by the counter. She asked Derek directly if he got my permission before telling everyone I'd provide childcare. Derek looked at her and then at me. He admitted he didn't ask. He said he knew I'd say yes eventually. He said I was good with kids and home anyway, so it made sense. He said he didn't think he needed to ask because it was obvious I'd want to help family. I felt something shift in my chest. He actually believed he didn't need my permission to volunteer my time. He actually thought being good with kids meant I automatically owed childcare to his entire family. He actually saw nothing wrong with making commitments using my labor without my consent. Derek kept talking. He said he thought I'd be happy to be more involved with his family. He said he was trying to help me feel included. He said he knew I sometimes felt like an outsider at family gatherings, so he thought giving me a role would help. He said he was trying to do something nice for me. I told Derek that forcing involvement wasn't inclusion. I said volunteering someone wasn't the same as inviting them. I said making decisions about my time without asking me was disrespectful. I said if he wanted me involved with his family, he should have asked me what kind of involvement I wanted, not assigned me a job I never agreed to do. Derek stood up fast enough that his chair scraped loudly against the floor. He said I was choosing my pride over family harmony. He said I was willing to destroy his relationships with his siblings and parents just to prove a point. He said I was being stubborn and unreasonable. He said he came here to work things out, but I clearly wasn't interested in compromise. He walked out of the kitchen and I heard the front door close hard behind him. My mom sat down in the chair Derek had just left. She said Derek's definition of harmony seemed to be everyone doing what he wants without complaint. She said his version of compromise was me giving in to what he'd already decided. She said I needed to think carefully about whether this was a marriage I wanted to stay in. Over the next week, my phone buzzed constantly with messages from Derek's family. His brother sent a text saying I was making things harder for everyone by refusing to help out. Derek's cousin messaged asking if I was really going to let family relationships fall apart over babysitting. Another sister-in-law sent a long paragraph about how she always thought I was part of the family, but now she wasn't sure. Each message had a different approach but the same goal. Some tried anger, telling me I was being difficult and causing problems. Others went for guilt, reminding me about family gatherings where everyone had been nice to me, and now I was repaying that kindness by refusing to help. A few used the concerned approach, saying they were worried about my marriage and mental state, suggesting maybe I was overwhelmed and not thinking clearly. I read each message and felt the same frustration building. Nobody was asking why I was upset. Nobody was questioning whether Derek should have asked me first. They were all focused on getting me to change my mind and go back to being their free childcare. Derek's sister Layla sent the longest message on Thursday afternoon. I was sitting at my mom's kitchen table when my phone lit up with a notification. The message filled my entire screen and I had to scroll to read it all. She wrote about how family sacrifices for each other without keeping score. She said their mom had watched all the grandkids over the years and never complained once. She said that's what family does. They help each other through busy times and hard seasons. She wrote that I was being selfish by making this about me instead of thinking about the bigger picture of family support. She said my attitude was hurting everyone, not just Derek, and that I needed to think about whether I really valued being part of their family. She said if I loved Derek, I would want to help maintain good relationships with his siblings and parents. She said she was disappointed in me because she thought I understood what family meant. The message ended with her saying she hoped I would reconsider my position before I damaged relationships that couldn't be repaired. I stared at the message for several minutes before responding. I typed out my reply carefully, reading it twice before sending. I told Layla that her mom chose to watch grandkids. Nobody volunteered her time without asking her first. Nobody showed up at her door with children and expected her to take them without any discussion. I explained that Derek made commitments using my time without my knowledge or consent. I said that wasn't sacrifice. That was being voluntold. I wrote that I would have been happy to discuss helping with childcare if anyone had actually asked me, but nobody did. Derek decided for me and then told everyone I agreed when I never said anything of the sort. I said the issue wasn't about helping family, it was about respect and consent and basic communication. I told her that volunteering someone else's time without asking them first isn't thoughtful or helpful. It's controlling and disrespectful. Layla replied within an hour. Her message was shorter this time, but sharper. She said I was overthinking the whole situation and making it about control issues when it was really just about helping family. She wrote that I was creating drama where there didn't need to be any. She said if I really loved Derek, I would want to support his family relationships, instead of making him choose between his wife and his family. She said I was being inflexible and rigid about something that should have been simple. She wrote that maybe I needed to think about why I was so focused on having everything my way instead of compromising. She said marriage was about give and take, and all she was seeing from me was take. The message felt like an attack disguised as concern. I put my phone down and walked away from it. I stood at my mom's kitchen window looking out at her backyard. The realization settled over me slowly but completely. Derek's family saw nothing wrong with what he did because they benefited from free childcare. They weren't interested in understanding boundaries or consent or respect. They were interested in getting their babysitter back. Every message, every guilt trip, every manipulation attempt was about maintaining access to free childcare, not about understanding my perspective or caring about my feelings. They had convinced themselves that family obligation meant I owed them my time and labor without question. They believed Derek had the right to volunteer me for things without asking, because that's how they thought family worked. The fact that I objected to this arrangement made me the problem in their eyes, not Derek, who created the situation without my consent. I realized I could explain my position 100 different ways, and it wouldn't matter because they didn't want to understand. They wanted compliance. Derek called Saturday morning. I answered on the third ring. He sounded tired and frustrated. He said his mom wanted to have a family meeting to clear the air. He said everyone was upset and confused and they needed to talk things through as a family. He said his mom thought if we all sat down together, we could work this out and move past it. I told Derek I would attend the meeting only if he did something first. I said he needed to tell everyone the truth before the meeting happened. He needed to tell his family that he volunteered my time without asking me, that I never agreed to the childcare arrangement, and that this whole situation was his mistake. Derek went quiet for a long moment. Then he said he would explain things to his family before the meeting. He said he would make sure they understood what happened. I told Derek that wasn't good enough. I said I wanted to hear what he told them. I said he needed to explain the situation with me present, or on a call I could listen to. I wasn't going to let him tell another soft version of events where he made himself look better and me look unreasonable. Derek sighed but agreed. He said he would set up a video call with his parents and siblings, so we could all talk together. He said he would explain everything honestly. We scheduled the call for the next evening. I spent the rest of Saturday and all of Sunday feeling anxious about the conversation. I knew his family would have reactions and opinions, and I needed to be ready to stand my ground. We set up the video call at 7 on Sunday night. I sat at my mom's dining room table with my laptop open. Derek called in from our house. His parents were together on their couch. His brother and sister-in-law were on another screen. Layla and her husband were on a third screen. Everyone's faces appeared in little boxes on my screen. Derek cleared his throat and started talking. He said he needed to explain something about the childcare situation. He said he may have gotten ahead of himself when he told everyone I would watch their kids. He said he didn't actually check with me first before making those arrangements. He said he assumed I would be okay with it since I was home anyway, and good with kids. He said he realized now that he should have asked me before volunteering my time. His explanation was awkward and halting, like he was choosing each word carefully. His family's reaction was mixed. Derek's mom spoke first, her face looking uncomfortable on the screen. She said she assumed I had agreed since Derek was so definite about the arrangement when he told everyone. She said if she had known I didn't know about it, she would have asked me directly. Derek's dad stayed quiet, his face unreadable. Then Layla jumped in immediately. She said that even if Derek didn't ask first, I still could have been more flexible once kids started showing up. She said family helps each other even when it's inconvenient. She said I made a bad situation worse by refusing to work with everyone. Her husband nodded in the background of their screen. I unmuted myself and spoke up. I said I needed everyone to understand what actually happened over those 3 weeks. I explained that over 3 weeks, I had up to 6 children dropped at my house without warning. I said people showed up as early as 8 in the morning with vague pickup times like later today or this afternoon or whenever I get back. I said I never agreed to any of it. I said Derek went golfing while I managed 6 kids I didn't sign up to watch. I said one child got sick in my bathroom. I said another broke a lamp. I said my own child stopped getting attention from me because I was overwhelmed managing everyone else's children. I said this wasn't about being unwilling to help family occasionally. I said this was about Derek making a commitment using my time and labor without ever asking my permission, then dismissing my objections when I said no. Derek's mom shifted in her seat on the video call screen and her face looked uncomfortable. She said she had no idea the situation had gotten that bad with so many kids being dropped off without warning. She said if she had known it was 6 children at once with unclear pickup times, she would have said something to Derek right away. Derek's dad had been quiet through most of the call, just sitting there with his arms crossed. But now he spoke up. He said Derek should have asked me before making any commitments to family members about childcare. He said volunteering someone else's time without their permission wasn't right, even if it was family asking. Layla jumped back in immediately, her voice getting louder through the computer speakers. She said family helps each other without keeping score of who does what. She said I was making this whole thing transactional when it should just be about supporting each other. She said her mom used to watch all the grandkids without complaining about hours or how many showed up. I unmuted myself again and said there was a big difference between what Layla was describing and what happened to me. I said I wasn't asked to help. I was told I was helping. I said Derek made commitments using my time without ever getting my permission first. I said that's not the same as choosing to help family. I said being voluntold to do something is completely different from volunteering. Layla rolled her eyes on screen and said I was splitting hairs and being difficult. Her husband nodded behind her. Derek's mom tried to calm things down by saying maybe everyone needed to take some time to think about family expectations and how we communicate. She said clearly there had been some misunderstanding about the arrangement and how it got started. She suggested we all step back and consider what reasonable boundaries look like for family help. The call ended soon after that, with everyone saying awkward goodbyes and logging off one by one. Derek seemed relieved it was over. He closed his laptop and let out a long breath. But I could tell nothing had actually been resolved. His family still thought I was being unreasonable. Derek still didn't seem to fully understand why what he did was wrong. The conversation had happened, but it didn't change anything. 2 days went by. I was at my mom's house scrolling through my phone when I saw a new post from Derek's cousin Seth. It was a long paragraph about how modern marriages were losing their commitment to extended family. He wrote about how traditional values meant supporting your spouse's family without question. He talked about how keeping score in families destroyed relationships. He said people today were too focused on individual rights instead of family obligations. The post didn't mention me by name, but it was obviously about our situation. The timing made that clear. Several of Derek's family members had already liked the post. Layla commented saying she agreed completely. Derek's brother's wife commented with a bunch of supportive emojis. I felt sick reading it. Our private family problem was now a public statement about my character. Seth had turned my boundary into a social media lecture about my values. I took screenshots of the post and all the comments. Then I called Derek. He was still at our house. I asked if he had seen Seth's post. Derek said yeah, he had seen it. He said Seth was just venting and I shouldn't take it personally. He said I should ignore it instead of making it into a bigger issue than it needed to be. I felt my anger rising. I told Derek that his family was now publicly shaming me because I wouldn't provide free childcare that I never agreed to in the first place. I said they were posting on social media about how I lacked family values. I said this was humiliating and he needed to tell Seth to take it down. Derek sighed and said I was being too sensitive. He said social media posts didn't matter in real life. He said Seth wasn't even using my name, so nobody would know it was about me. I said everyone in his family knew exactly what it was about based on the timing and the comments from his relatives. Derek said I was overreacting and that I should just block Seth if the post bothered me that much. I hung up and sat there feeling angry and hurt. My mom came into the room and asked what was wrong. I showed her the post and explained what Derek had said. She read through it carefully, then looked at me with concern. She said this whole situation was showing some serious problems with boundaries and respect. She said the way Derek kept dismissing my feelings and the way his family felt entitled to my time were both red flags. She suggested I talk to a therapist about everything that had been happening. She said the boundary violations and the gaslighting were serious issues that I might need professional help processing. I agreed. I felt overwhelmed by everything, and I needed someone outside the situation to help me think through it all. I looked up therapists in the area and found one who had openings. I made an appointment for the following week. The day of my first therapy session arrived. I drove to the office and sat in the waiting room feeling nervous. When the therapist called me back, I followed her into a small office with comfortable chairs. She asked me to explain what brought me in. I started talking and everything came pouring out. I told her about Derek volunteering my time without asking. I told her about 3 weeks of unexpected kids being dropped off. I told her about leaving and going to my mom's house. I told her about the family video call and Seth's social media post. I told her about Derek dismissing my feelings over and over. The therapist listened carefully and took notes. Then she asked me to describe other times Derek had made decisions about my life without consulting me first. I started thinking back through our marriage. I realized there were many examples I had never really noticed before. He had accepted a job in a different city without discussing it with me first. He had volunteered us to host his family's holiday gathering without asking if I was comfortable with that. He had made plans for us on weekends without checking my schedule. He had bought a car without talking to me about it, even though it affected our budget. The list went on. I sat there feeling stunned as I recognized the pattern that had been there all along. The therapist helped me understand what I was seeing. She said this wasn't just about childcare. She said it was about Derek not viewing me as an equal partner whose consent and time mattered. She explained that in healthy relationships, both people have equal say in decisions that affect them. She said what I was describing was a pattern of disrespect where Derek made unilateral choices and expected me to go along with them. She said this kind of pattern wouldn't change unless Derek recognized there was a problem and committed to changing his behavior. She asked how I felt about that. I said I felt scared and sad. I said I loved Derek, but I was starting to see that our marriage had some fundamental issues I hadn't wanted to acknowledge before. When I got back to my mom's house that evening, Derek called. I told him I had started seeing a therapist, and that I was learning our marriage had some serious respect and boundary issues. Derek got quiet for a moment, then his voice changed and he sounded defensive. He said I was letting a stranger turn me against him and his family. He said therapists always tried to break up marriages by convincing people their partners were bad. He said I was looking for problems that weren't really there. He said if I would just come home and stop being so stubborn about the childcare thing, everything would go back to normal. I told Derek that normal was the problem. I said normal in our marriage meant him making decisions without me and expecting me to accept whatever he chose. I said I didn't want that normal anymore. Derek went quiet for a long moment on the other end of the phone. When he spoke again, his voice had that edge to it that meant he was getting mad. He said therapy was making me too focused on myself instead of thinking about us as a team. I felt my grip tighten on the phone. I told him a team makes decisions together, which was exactly what he hadn't been doing. He said I was twisting things around and hung up. I sat there staring at my phone, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. My next therapy session was 3 days later. I drove to the office and settled into the chair across from the therapist. She asked how things had gone since our last session. I told her about the phone call with Derek and his reaction to me being in therapy. She listened and took notes. Then she suggested couples counseling if Derek was willing to try it. She said having a neutral third party might help us communicate better about the boundary issues. I told her I would ask him. That evening I called Derek and brought up the idea of couples counseling. He immediately said no. He said he didn't need therapy and that we could work this out ourselves if I just stopped being so rigid about boundaries. I asked him what he meant by rigid. He said I was making hard rules about things that should be flexible in a marriage. He said family helping each other shouldn't require formal agreements and permission slips. I told him I wasn't asking for formal agreements. I was asking to be consulted before he made commitments using my time. He said that was the same thing and that I was being difficult on purpose. After we hung up, I sat in my mom's kitchen feeling something shift inside me. I realized Derek didn't think he had done anything wrong. He genuinely believed I was the problem for not going along with his decisions. He thought my objection to being volunteered as family daycare without my knowledge or consent was me being selfish and rigid. This clarity hurt, but I needed it. I needed to understand that he wasn't going to suddenly see my side because he didn't think there was anything to see. 2 days later, my phone rang with a number I recognized as Philip's. I answered and he started talking right away. He said he wanted to apologize for showing up that Saturday morning with his 2 kids. He said he genuinely didn't know I hadn't agreed to watch them. Derek had made it sound like a done deal, like we'd all talked about it and worked out the details. Philip said he felt terrible about putting me in that position. I sat down at my mom's kitchen table. I told Philip I appreciated him calling. He said he'd been thinking about the whole situation since the family video call. He said he kept imagining how he would feel if his wife volunteered his time without asking him first. He admitted he wouldn't like it at all. He said he understood why I was upset and why I left. His apology felt real. I could hear in his voice that he actually got it. I thanked him for understanding and for calling. I told him it meant a lot that someone in Derek's family could see why this was a problem. Philip said he was going to talk to Derek about respecting my time and decisions. He said Derek needed to hear from someone other than me that what he did wasn't okay. This gave me a small bit of hope that maybe not everyone in the family was completely against me. Maybe some of them could understand boundaries and consent. 3 days after Philip's call, Derek showed up at my mom's house again. This time he looked different when I opened the door. More serious, less defensive. He asked if we could talk. I let him in and we sat in the living room. He said Philip had called him and they'd talked for over an hour. He said Philip helped him see things differently. Derek said he wanted to understand why this hurt me so much. I looked at him carefully, trying to figure out if this was real or just another attempt to get me to come home and go back to how things were. I decided to try one more time to explain. I told him it wasn't about helping family. I loved his family, and I was happy to help when I could. But this was about him making commitments using my time without my consent, then dismissing my objections when I said no. It was about him treating my time and my choices as less important than his desire to look good to his family. Derek actually listened this time. He didn't interrupt or argue. He sat there and nodded and looked at me while I talked. When I finished, he was quiet for a minute. Then he admitted he hadn't thought about it from my perspective. He said he'd been so focused on looking good to his family that he didn't consider how his decisions affected me. He said he'd always felt pressure to be the helpful son and brother. His whole life, his parents praised him when he stepped up for family. He said somewhere along the way, he let that pressure override my needs and my right to make my own choices. I told him I understood family pressure. I really did. But he couldn't sacrifice my autonomy to manage his relationships with his family. He needed to be able to tell his family no sometimes, or at least ask me before volunteering me for things. His family's approval couldn't come at the cost of my consent and my boundaries. Derek nodded slowly. He said he was starting to see that now. I asked Derek if he would go to couples counseling with me. He looked down at his hands for a long moment before nodding. He said he would call and make an appointment the next day. He also promised he would send a message to his entire family making it clear the childcare arrangement was permanently over and that creating it was his mistake. I felt something shift inside me when he said that. Not relief exactly, but maybe the smallest bit of hope that we could fix this. Derek called a counseling office the next morning and got us an appointment for the following week. He also drafted a message to send to his family. He showed it to me first and asked if it said what needed to be said. The message explained that he had volunteered my time without asking me, that this was wrong and that there would be no family childcare arrangement going forward. I told him it was good and he should send it. He hit send and then put his phone face down on the table like he didn't want to see the responses coming in. The following Tuesday, we sat in the counseling office waiting for our first session. The therapist called us back and we sat on a couch across from her chair. She asked us to explain why we were there. Derek looked at me and I looked at him. Finally, I started talking. I explained the whole situation from the beginning. The therapist listened without interrupting. When I finished, she turned to Derek and asked him to explain what he understood about why his actions were hurtful. Derek took a breath and said he violated my boundaries by making decisions about my time without asking. He said he treated my availability as something he could promise to other people without my consent. He said that wasn't okay, and he understood why I left. The therapist nodded and asked him some follow-up questions about how he thought I felt when family members kept showing up with their kids. Derek admitted he hadn't really thought about my feelings at the time, because he was focused on looking helpful to his family. Over the next several sessions, the therapist worked with us on how we communicate and make decisions. She pointed out that Derek had a pattern of making choices and then informing me instead of discussing things together first. Derek admitted this was true. He said he often decided what he thought was best and then told me about it rather than asking what I wanted. The therapist helped him see that this approach treated me like someone who needed to be managed rather than a partner with equal say. Derek said he never thought about it that way before, but he could see how his behavior came across as controlling. The therapist gave us homework assignments about checking in with each other before making commitments that affected both of us. We went to counseling every week for 2 months. During that time, Derek started to understand that his family's expectations didn't override my right to make my own choices about my time. He began setting boundaries with his family when they made demands. When his cousin called asking for a favor, Derek said he needed to check with me first instead of just agreeing. When Layla texted about getting together, Derek asked me if I wanted to go instead of telling her we'd be there. These small changes felt significant because they showed Derek was actually trying to do things differently. 3 weeks after our first session, Derek sent his message to the extended family. He wrote that he had made a mistake by volunteering my time without asking me first. He explained that there would be no family childcare arrangement going forward. He said this was his error, and he took full responsibility for creating an unfair situation. Some family members responded with supportive messages saying they understood. Philip texted back that he appreciated Derek being honest about what happened. A few people didn't respond at all, which felt like they were ignoring the message on purpose. Layla responded 2 days later with a snarky text. She wrote that she would remember this when Derek needed help from family in the future. Her message made it clear she thought we were being selfish, and that family was supposed to help each other without keeping score. Derek read her text and then wrote back. He told Layla that was her choice to make, but he wasn't going to pressure me into providing free childcare just to maintain family approval. He said he valued his marriage more than he valued looking good to relatives. Layla didn't respond after that. Derek seemed bothered by her reaction, but he didn't take back what he said. After 2 months of counseling and living at my mom's house, I decided to move back home. Derek had been making real changes in how he communicated and made decisions. He was checking with me before agreeing to things. He was setting boundaries with his family. He seemed to genuinely understand why what he did was wrong. I felt cautiously optimistic that we could make our marriage work if he kept making these changes. Before I moved back, we sat down and established new rules. Any decision that affected both of us required both people to agree. Family visits needed to be discussed and planned together. Neither of us would make commitments involving the other person without asking first. Derek agreed to all of it. I packed up my things at my mom's house and went home. 2 weeks after I moved back, Derek's parents invited us for dinner. His mom called and asked if we could come over on Saturday evening. Derek checked with me first before agreeing, which felt like progress. We drove to their house and his mom answered the door. She hugged me and said she was glad we were working things out. During dinner, she brought up the childcare situation. She said she wanted to apologize for not speaking up sooner. She explained that she had assumed I agreed to watch everyone's kids because Derek was so definite about the arrangement. She said she should have asked me directly instead of just taking Derek's word for it. Her apology felt genuine. I told her I appreciated her saying that. The dinner was somewhat awkward but civil. Derek's dad didn't say much during the meal. After we finished eating, he asked Derek to help him with something in the garage. They were gone for about 20 minutes. When they came back, Derek looked thoughtful. On the drive home, Derek told me what his dad had said. His dad told him that part of being a good husband is protecting your wife's boundaries, even from family. He said that family is important, but your spouse comes first, and Derek needed to remember that. Derek said hearing that from his dad meant a lot because his dad had always emphasized family loyalty above everything else. The fact that his dad was telling him to put me first felt significant. 3 months after the initial crisis, Derek and I were in a better place but still working on things in counseling. We went to sessions every other week now instead of every week. Derek was learning to check with me before making commitments that involved my time or affected our schedule. I was learning to speak up earlier when something bothered me instead of letting issues build up. Our therapist said we were making good progress on communication and decision-making. Derek's relationship with some family members had changed. Some people accepted the new boundaries and now asked me directly if I was available to watch kids occasionally, which I sometimes agreed to when it worked for my schedule. Other family members stayed distant and seemed to hold a grudge about the whole situation. Derek was learning that real family respects your choices even when they don't benefit from them. Philip's wife Agatha called me 3 weeks after Derek sent his message to the family. She asked if I would be available to watch their kids the following Saturday afternoon while she and Philip went to a wedding. I appreciated that she called me directly, instead of going through Derek. I checked my schedule and told her I could do it from 2 to 6 that afternoon. She thanked me and said she'd drop them off at 2 sharp. When Saturday came, she arrived exactly on time with snacks packed and a list of emergency contacts. She picked them up at 6:15 and paid me for my time even though I told her it wasn't necessary. That's what the new normal looked like with some family members. Others weren't so understanding. Layla stopped speaking to Derek almost completely after he sent that message. She showed up to family gatherings but barely acknowledged us. Derek's parents' house for Thanksgiving, she sat at the opposite end of the table and left right after dessert without saying goodbye. Derek tried talking to her a few times, but she shut him down every time. Christopher, her husband, was polite but distant. Their kids didn't come to our house anymore, even for birthday parties. Derek struggled with Layla's reaction more than he expected. He told me one night that he always thought family would understand once he explained things properly. But Layla seemed to take the whole situation as a personal insult. I reminded him that some people don't want to understand. They just want things to go back to how they were when it benefited them. Philip and Agatha became closer friends with us after everything settled down. They invited us over for dinner regularly, and Philip told Derek he respected him for standing up for his marriage even when it made family relationships complicated. My therapist helped me work through my feelings about the family members who stayed angry. I told her I felt guilty sometimes that my boundaries had caused problems in Derek's family relationships. She asked me if I thought those relationships were healthy to begin with, if they only worked when I was providing free labor without consent. I realized she had a point. She explained that some people only valued me for what I could do for them, not for who I was as a person. Losing relationships with people like that wasn't actually a loss. It was removing something unhealthy from my life. She said I needed to stop viewing it as my failure and start seeing it as a natural consequence of setting reasonable boundaries. People who genuinely cared about me would respect those boundaries even if they didn't like them. A year after the whole childcare crisis started, Derek and I hosted a family barbecue at our house. We planned it together and sent out invitations 3 weeks in advance. Some family members came, others didn't. Layla and Christopher sent their regrets. Philip and Agatha showed up early to help set up. Derek's parents came and his mom brought her famous potato salad. During the barbecue, Agatha asked if I could watch the kids the following weekend. I checked with Derek about our plans first, then told her I was free and would be happy to help. Later that evening, after everyone left, Derek and I cleaned up the backyard together. He thanked me for agreeing to watch Philip's kids. I told him it felt different when people asked instead of assumed. He agreed and said he finally understood why his original arrangement had been so wrong. Our marriage was stronger because we learned to talk to each other before making decisions that affected both of us. We still went to counseling once a month to keep working on communication. The boundaries I fought for became our new normal. Some family relationships stayed damaged and probably always would be. But my relationship with Derek was healthier because we both learned that being married means respecting each other's choices and time.